Identity Crisis changed the perspective between superheroes. It changed how they looked at each other. It brought into question themes and concepts of the ramifications of 9/11. There were so many things going on in there. But again, when you reduce it down to a whodunit murder mystery, it was solid.
We never set out to do a big event. We never set out to do something that was going to be the big platform book of the year. We never set out to do something that was going to have a lot of crossovers. We just set out to tell a small story.
There have been great stories of comic books being created in a situation where the creative people have been sequestered away in some magical dark place over a period of days. There's the great one about Crisis, where Dan DiDio and Jeff Johns and some of the guys went off and did something similar, and that has become one of the great legends of modern day comics.
Now here's a question I've been waiting to ask you because you seem to be the only one that might be able to answer. Apparently there's a legend of you and Jeff and Greg Rucka, Judd Winnick, and Eddie Berganza locking yourselves away for 3 days to sort of map out this whole story.
That's absolutely correct.
What was going on behind those closed doors for 3 days?
Dan had arranged us to have this meeting room with Eddie Berganza, Greg Rucka, and Judd Winnick, and myself on the Warner Brothers Burbank ranch.
When we were in those meetings, what we did, and the way we ran the meeting, the way I ran the meeting, was that I looked at 3-month windows and all of our primary characters and books. And what we did is we tried to create events to get us to what would be Infinite Crisis.
We had all these boards up. I remember writing all these ideas down, and all these boards up and just throwing idea after idea after idea out of what could happen over this 2-year period, where we're going from Identity Crisis to Infinite Crisis.
And literally, we were listing what was going to be taking place event-wise. Not looking at the titles they were in, just event-wise. We had key moments. Blue Beetle's death was a key moment in the DC Universe. The destruction of the Watchtower with Martian Manhunter presumed dead was a key moment in the DC Universe. Because they were moments that were going to become rally cries that resonated through the rest of the line. And then ultimately the start of Infinite Crisis was a key moment.
Well, stories of that scope are always enormously intricate, both the planning and also the negotiating. You have to convince the company that it's okay to kill a particular character or kill a concept. You have to convince a writer or artist who's driving another book how the pieces should fit together. So they tend to be very complex processes.
I remember Dan kept saying, I wanted the darkest day the DC Universe has ever faced. Dan always had this huge vision, and it was a very good one, of space. It's chaotic in space.
That's a lot of what Infinite Crisis was about. It felt that there was a sense of urgency and change occurring throughout the DC Universe as a whole, not across individual titles, but across the entire line. And it felt like the entire line had more merit and weight because of it.
It did feel like our comics were shiny again. They were new.
One of Dan's approaches to the DC Universe has been very much influenced by his time in television. He thinks on a certain level as a programmer, and he tries to keep the universe having events.
Well, what we did is that we looked at big, bigger, biggest, as you would do with sequels, so to speak. And we basically touched upon every corner of the DC Universe in our stories between those 3 stories. We touched upon our past, we touched upon our future, we touched upon the multi-dimensions, we touched upon multi-timelines. We've gone everywhere we can because we think that everything that DC has been can be everything that DC will be, and is a resource to the stories that we tell right now.
After Identity Crisis kind of got rolling, he took the cue to go back to Jeff, who was rising in the ranks and was clearly reaching an audience that many of us hadn't tapped into for a while. The people who do know about all of our Golden Age characters, the people who do know about all the universes, and Jeff was becoming the authority.
Well, you got to remember, like, comic sales in 2000, like late 90s, early 2000 they were really low. There wasn't a lot of buzz at DC for like big events. They hadn't done something that covered the entire and tied the entire universe in for years and years. And Dan really came in there, and I remember he started with Teen Titans and Outsiders, and he started to rebuild, kind of trying to rebuild and refocus the editorial on the main books and the main characters.
And that's when we get to start to looking at Infinite Crisis, because we realize that sometimes the threat is truly greater than the hero. The hero doesn't always win. So when you know with the fact that you can lose and you might lose, are you still really ready to try? And that's what a lot of Infinite Crisis is about.
It would be 2005 into 2006 when the next crisis would hit in the DCU, leading ultimately to Final Crisis in 2008.
The whole purpose of Final Crisis was to see what it takes to be a hero in the face of a loss and the ultimate loss. The fact that everything around you has changed, everything that you believed in is gone. What do? As a hero, do you continue to fight the good fight for what you believe in? Do you try to adapt and try to change the new system, the new world order from the inside? Do you just give up and just walk away from it all?
You must enter into the psychology of the superhero. You must explore this new territory in order to be contemporary, to continue to evolve and become more sophisticated in your storytelling and characterization. In order to achieve suspension of disbelief, you have to go there.
All these years when I was reading comics, there's always that scene of Superman getting punched through a building, and he starts here, and here's the building, and then he comes out over here. And I would always look at that picture and go, did he hit anyone? What happened to the people in the building? Who got hurt? Whose desk got wrecked? I always would think those thoughts, and it wasn't that I was a genius, I was just clearly a little too obsessed, but it made the problem real to me. And what I liked about those moments are, those to me made the moments real because then they could happen. The more real I made it, the more then it could happen. And that's what I wanted more than anything from comics, is I wanted them to be able to happen.
And that's what Crisis is doing. And that's what Identity Crisis in particular achieved. It is the psychological examination of the superhero. It's a furthering, in a sense, of the deconstruction of the superhero as we've known him. And because of that, and because the audience is older and more sophisticated, the work has become more sophisticated and more mature, and that's how this suspension of disbelief is able to continue.
I don't think I ever, in my wildest, egocentric, narcissistic dreams, still could have dreamed that Identity Crisis would be what it has been. I got an email today from someone who said to me, Identity Crisis had such an impact on me. I wrote to you when it came out, and now I'm getting my first book published, and I just wanted to tell you. And that was one of those moments where, you know, it's not just a story anymore, it's something that some person out there who's going to have his book published was inspired by.
I think we transcended what we set out to do with Identity Crisis. I mean, at the end of the day, if we had a 7-issue miniseries that was able to stand the test of time, which this book does, that is able to give a layer of depth to the heroes, which I think it does, and had some ramifications that played out into the DC universe, that'd be great. That's exactly what we wanted.
Frankly, just from the inspiration that Dan took from it for the rest of the line, we're still benefiting from what the story meant to the characters.
What I love about comics is the periodic nature of our storytelling, and the fact that what we don't accomplish this month, we might be able to accomplish better next month.
Comic books have been coming out every Wednesday for years. The fact that writers and artists and editors can come up with new ways to entice the readers to come into the shops on Wednesday and look forward to the next adventure, that's an amazing thing that Crisis is in the center of and has managed to do for DC Comics.
We all want to sound important when we say, what were the great books we read? We want to say Moby Dick, and we want to sound self-important. We forget that the first morality tales we ever read are with Superman, and they're with Batman. And these characters meant something to me, and they helped me through parts of my life. And they entertained me, but they supported me in a strange, odd way. And if that happens to anyone out there, that is more than I can ever possibly ask for. But at the end of the day, I just hope that, that people get as much joy from them as I got from them.
I feel extremely fortunate to be working in the business. I love it. It's a thrill, and I love getting up every day and working into the late night.
If you came to me when I was a teenager and asked me, what would you want to be when you grow up, this would have been one of the jobs I chose. So for that, I am eternally grateful.